Emmys since 2013 has been a disappointment to me because in 2013, the Emmys showed me what they are capable of, and they haven't done it since. The Television Academy, the people who bring you the Emmys, have awarded a trophy for outstanding choreography since 1955. Past winners have been recognized for their work on the likes of The Carol Burnett Show, Liza with a Z, Fame, the Miss America pageant, the opening ceremonies of the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, and High School Musical. Starting in 2007, the nominations started to look vastly different. Instead of a hodgepodge of staged-for-TV musicals, variety specials, and other award shows, the list of nominees became dominated by reality competition shows. From 2007 until the 2020s, the award was given every single year to work from Dancing with the Stars, So You Think You Can Dance, or America's Best Dance Crew, except for one win for Smash and one for Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. In 2019, they split the category in two, so now there is one Emmy for choreography in a scripted show and one for choreography in a reality or variety show, so there's always room for shows like Euphoria, Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, Schmigadoon, and Dolly Parton's Christmas on the Square. Now, even if you are the most avid Emmys watcher, you probably don't remember any of these winners, and you definitely don't remember seeing them accept the award on the primetime broadcast because the award isn't given on the primetime broadcast. It's given along with the other awards that the Emmys considers B-list at the Creative Arts Emmys, which usually happen a week before the main ceremony. Except for 2013. In 2013, something magical happened, and not only was the Choreography Award given at the main primetime broadcast, but it was accompanied by a full 2.5-minute dance number musical extravaganza. It's the greatest thing I've ever seen, and they never did it again. Some important context. The Emmys that year was hosted by Neil Patrick Harris. Neil Patrick Harris should host at least one major award ceremony every year, but some of you aren't ready for that conversation. I know he hosted like a quarter of all of the award shows that decade. It still wasn't enough. Sometimes things are popular because they're good. Unlike some of the other chuckleheads that get these gigs, Neil Patrick Harris is a legitimate live entertainer, and he can sing and dance, which is a Maserati you should not keep in the garage if you're producing an awards show. The 2013 Emmys were already set to horribly underutilize Neil Patrick Harris by not opening the show with a musical number, opting instead for this awkward bit where he attempts to binge watch a year of television in minutes. They do throw us a bone with a song halfway through the show called The Song Halfway Through the Show, which is something, but then some unsung genius at the Television Academy had the idea of the century. Wait a minute, they say, one of the Emmy Awards is for choreography. We literally have actual artists being recognized for their work staging musical numbers, many of them for work for a live on stage and simultaneously live on TV medium. This is something television already does, and we already have a lineup people who are known for doing it well. We probably have their phone numbers. What if we just call Taylor up? So that's what they do. A few months before the Emmy Awards, they gather together the nominees for Best Choreography for 2013. Derek Hough, Allison Holker, Travis Wall, Sonia Taya, Napoleon and Tabitha Dumo, and Mandy Jo Moore. Warren Carlyle was also nominated in the category for Rodgers and Hammerstein's Carousel, live from Lincoln Center, but he was unfortunately unable to attend the show due to being British. The choreographers get invited to a little reception to get their nomination certificates, but then, surprise, they're on candid camera for the big news.
We thought a good thing to do would be to do a big giant production number in the show. You can choose the music, you can choose the sets, you can choose the dancers. The payoff for you guys is that for the first time ever, we're going to announce that category on the primetime show.
Fast forward to the big night, September 22nd, 2013, a couple hours into the awards broadcast. We, the viewers, are filled in on this backstory through a little pre-recorded package, while presumably at this time stage hands are frantically wheeling things on stage and dressers are turning shirt sleeves inside out to prepare for a frantic next 3 minutes. We transition with bubbles for some reason. All the transitions were done with bubbles that year, to Neil Patrick Harris fully in his element, center stage with a show tune.
They call you Lady Luck.
You might think for a moment you're at the Tonys, because the number kicks off with Luck Be a Lady from Guys and Dolls, which as far as I can tell has nothing to do with television, but this number isn't just about television, it's about awards night. With jazz hands, it's about awards night. It's a performance for a room full of people that may or may not go home with a major career achievement, with recognition from their peers, with hardware. A prize! They might get a prize! The prize is front and center in this opening bit. Neil Patrick Harris sings in front of a little wall with arms. Gloved arms poke through little holes and do a little dancey dance, an image inspired by old Hollywood and Jack Cole. This is viscerally upsetting imagery to me for reasons that I cannot at all articulate. Something about the way the arms move and the unnatural place they're cut off and the wandering fingers. Ugh. It's much nicer to look at when they have props. The middle arms get to hold little Emmy Award trophies, and that works a lot better. The choreography is also simpler for the awards hands, so it ends up looking a lot cleaner. Soon, the wall rolls away to give Neil Patrick Harris room to work. And the dancers come out.
Luck if you've ever been a lady to begin with.
So after some posing and some leg extensions, the wall wheels away once again, and this time they do a little switcheroo. It looks like Neil Patrick Harris crosses up stage for the next sequence, but actually they've swapped out a dancer who actually makes a pretty convincing Neil Patrick Harris body double, Derek Hough. That's one of the nominees. You might remember him from earlier in the video. Hough is actually nominated twice, both times for work on ABC's Dancing with the Stars. In Dancing with the Stars, the choreographers are not behind-the-scenes designers invisible to the audience. They perform on screen. They're part of the competition, and lots of them are recognizable to fans. They are the person who dances with the star.
It's the titular role!
No! And Derek Hough is a dance world celebrity in his own right. He's a competitive ballroom champion, a Broadway performer, and is kind of the guy you call if you want to put a dance sequence in your otherwise not dance TV show. You might have seen him on NBC's Hairspray Live in 2016.
Live television, nothing like it.
Or in the first Harry Potter movie. That's him. He's right there. These are not his most important or even most relevant credits, but these are the ones I care about. So this little switcheroo moment when Neil Patrick Harris looks up and is suddenly not Neil Patrick Harris anymore, but some other guy, means nothing to most people watching, but means everything to a small but enthusiastic portion of the audience. And when he looks up from under his hat, you see he's got a lit cigarette, which means it is time for a tribute to the only TV show that has ever made smoking look cool to me. Doo-doo, doo-doo. Doo-doo, doo-doo. Doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. Derek Hough enters this little cube and enters the world of Mad Men. Waiting for him is Allison Holker, a future Dancing with the Stars pro, who is co-nominated along with Derek Hough for a pro showcase number that they performed together set to Heart Cry. I am 99% sure that's what went down anyway. The Television Academy maintains an official website that includes listings of past winners and nominees, and Allison Holker is not listed as being nominated in 2013. Derek Hough is listed twice, and he is nominated alone for Heart Cry. But in this category, individuals are nominated, not specific work, so it doesn't make sense that Derek Hough would be nominated multiple times with lists of multiple works all from the same show. There are two explanations for this that I can think of. One of them is a juicy scandal where Allison Holker's nomination was retroactively stripped from her because she was revealed to have cheated at choreographing. This didn't happen. There is zero evidence for this. The more boring explanation is more likely, which is that there's just a mistake on the Emmys website. Every other source I looked at lists them as co-nominated. Allison Holker is also well known to dance fans. She spent some time as a pro on Dancing with the Stars and many years on So You Think You Can Dance. She has a handful of film credits. Here she is in High School Musical 2. That's her. On a sadder note, Allison Holker has not performed publicly since the loss of her husband, fellow So You Think You Can Dance all-star Steven Twitch Boss at the end of 2022. Over the past year, she's spoken publicly about her grief journey, and she says that returning to dance would be a big step in her healing that she will be ready for someday. Her memories dancing with her late husband, some of which are preserved in television broadcasts, are of course deeply precious to her. Suddenly, this dance from 2013, only 11 years old, now seems an eternity ago. So much life can fit in between then and now. And for Allison Holker, that includes every day of a marriage. This performance was about 3 months before the wedding, which actually included 6 other So You Think You Can Dance alums in the bridal party, including Travis Wall, who's also nominated. There's no good way to transition from that back into talking about Mad Men, so you're just gonna have to bear with me. There are gonna be several of these vibe shifts in this video because that's what happens when you talk about something from 11 years ago. So, Derek Hough, Allison Holker. She's got Betty blonde hair draped over the kitchen table waiting for her man, and he swaggers in with that Don Draper confidence. He's got a James Dean daydream look in his eyes. She's got that red lip classic thing that he likes, and they tango. The tension! The power struggle, the implicit threat of violence, the gender roles of it all. Mad Men is a period piece set in the 1960s, and there are a lot of 60s needle drops incorporated into the show. But the Mad Men feature in this dance number does not use an iconic 60s pop song or even a dance style associated with the setting. What they're using is the theme music to the show. Once upon a time, TV shows used to have theme songs. Actual songs with words and everything. In 2013, you could still find shows here and there that had legitimate theme songs with actual lyrics. I'm not always able to understand what the lyrics are, but I trust that they exist. But by this point, the theme song was clearly dying out in favor of the theme. An instrumental piece that sets the tone for the episode and backs the opening credit, but offers no performed lyrics. As someone who truly cannot help singing along with themes, and I mean, I sometimes will not realize I am doing it until someone in the room points it out, I feel that the decline of the theme song is a tragedy, and if music is repeated that often and doesn't have words, I will still find a way to sing it. But as much as I wish more new shows would have proper theme songs, intelligible lyrics or not, I'm not mad about the rise of instrumental themes. 2013 might have been in a golden age of the TV theme, with some of these instrumental pieces becoming as recognizable as any theme song. And Mad Men's theme is one of the best of them. It fits that show like an elbow-length glove with a tennis bracelet. Which is why I was kind of shocked to learn that that music was not composed for the show. The theme is credited to hip-hop producer RJD2, and Mad Men's creator Matthew Weiner first heard the music on a 2006 track by rapper Asylum.
Beautiful yours, a beautiful minds, one so enlightened, one so divine, the planets are aligned, all void of time. A beautiful mind.
I don't know enough about rap to give a critical analysis, so I'm going to take Tom Barnes' word for it when he writes for Mike that, had the song not been tapped to become the Mad Men theme, though, it would have surely receded into obscurity because the rap is, frankly, terrible. But the beat isn't terrible. The beat is fantastic. And when Matthew Weiner heard A Beautiful Mind on NPR, he loved it. It had a big old movie quality and the drama he was looking for, but there was also a contemporary feel to the beat and a driving rhythm of dread. The arrangement created for the Emmys dance brings the composition full circle by layering in a choppy remix of Neil Patrick Harris singing Luck Be a Lady. You know, from 8 seconds ago, and nominally connecting these two songs into one number. Derek Hough and Allison Holker rocket into a tango that echoes everything that is fabulous about the theme. Old Hollywood glamour and drama. There's smoldering tension and yearning with a sort of sinister undercurrent. This is the past like you remember it, in nostalgic daydreams, but there's something wrong here. These people are not all right, but damn do they look good doing it. Now, of course, this isn't the sum total of Mad Men. If you were going to make a dance inspired by Mad Men, there are a lot of other directions you could go. Nothing in this piece suggests the office politics, the changing America of the 60s, the journey of characters like Peggy. It also doesn't particularly match the visuals of the show, full of jewel tones and wood paneling and bright fluorescent lights. And as with the song choice, there's nothing that even particularly says 1960s. Derek Hough's outfit basically fits the period, but the fact that Neil Patrick Harris was just wearing the same outfit for Luck Be a Lady underlines the fact that it's more timeless than anything. Maybe this is a guy in the 60s or the 40s or the 20s, or maybe it's a guy hosting an award show in 2013. Men have worn the same thing for 100 years. What do you want me to do? Allison Holker's dress has a vaguely retro cut to it, but only vaguely, and the color and pattern choice don't particularly evoke Mad Men the show, but it does evoke the opening credit sequence, the black and white that dominate the screen as a suited silhouette falls from a skyscraper through the American ad man golden age. That's the moment that the dance is evoking. It's the feeling of sitting down and turning on the TV to watch the latest episode of Mad Men. It's the pivot point, the moment of transition when you step out of your living room, but before your step has landed in the Sterling Cooper offices or the Draper house. The Mad Men theme goes on just long enough that a lot of viewers are going to be tempted to grab the remote and skip it, especially if they're watching asynchronously on streaming or even just on a DVR. But that's a temptation that should be resisted. This 38-second sequence is not just marking time while the credits rolled to fulfill contractual obligations. It's doing work, important work, to force you to mentally reset and transition, to remind you that you decided to sit down and watch something extraordinary, and maybe you can pay at least 90% attention for once in your week. That transition is guided by the theme music, by that almost Pavlovian effect that a good theme can have on the viewer. Repetition is so powerful psychologically and artistically, and the repetition of the credit sequence week to week, episode to episode, as well as the repetition within the music, that do-do, do-do, it does something to me. And I see that feeling reflected in the dance. The dread for what's coming, but the excitement that you can't help, because it's fun, it's delicious, even when it's terrible. Maybe especially when it's terrible. It's good choreography, man. It's good staging and a well-chosen costume, and the whole thing is less than 20 seconds and it's a whole damn story. Don't let anybody tell you their movie needs to be 3.5 hours. And speaking of themes you should never skip, it's 2013, baby, and Game of Thrones is the coolest kid in school. By the time of the awards, the show had just finished airing its 3rd season and was arguably on top of its game. That year, the show was nominated for 13 Creative Arts Emmys and 4 awards in the main show. It wouldn't end up winning any major awards that year, and actually neither would Mad Men. They were up for a lot of the same categories, and both went home empty-handed. But even without being one of the most awarded shows, Game of Thrones was one of the most talked about. At that point, the show was in a real sweet spot where it was becoming hugely popular, but was still new enough to feel novel and intriguing. Any depiction of the state of television in 2013 would be incomplete without mentioning Thrones. Even if you didn't watch it, you knew somebody who did, and if they watched it, you would know because they would tell you. One of those many fans was Travis Wall, and hey, look at that, he's another one of our guys. Travis Wall is a longtime choreographer for the other major reality competition show that dominated the choreography category that decade, So You Think You Can Dance. Choreographers are also very visible figures in this program. They don't compete like they do in Dancing with the Stars, but viewers do get to hear from them during the show and sometimes see them dance as all-star partners or in special showcase numbers. It's common for the choreographers and the all-stars to be previous contestants, and that's the case here. Travis Wall placed 2nd in the 2nd season of So You Think You Can Dance at age 18.
I have different shades to me. I can jazz, tap, ballet, lyrical, contemporary, I can flip. And I think today I'm going to be doing definitely like shades of blue.
He stayed connected with the show for a decade, touring with other top dancers and returning as a choreographer and occasional guest dancer for 9 seasons. He appeared in the Adam Sandler movie Bedtime Stories and was a guest choreographer on RuPaul's Drag Race and the Dallas Cowboys cheerleader reality show. In 2020, he received his 10th consecutive nomination in this Emmys category. In 2021, the Toronto Star broke a story about sexual misconduct allegations at dance company Break the Floor. Travis Wall was one of the teachers implicated, and he was subsequently removed from the company's tour. Break the Floor is still in operation under different ownership and a new name, and there don't seem to have been any updates from the Toronto Star or from the company about the investigation into the allegations. Travis Wall has not choreographed for TV since the allegations broke, at least not at anything I can find, but he is still working in choreography, including as the choreographer for the OSU dance team's amazing jazz routine that was all over my TikTok feed for a week. Still with me? All right, tone shift. So Travis Wall took the lead choreographing the Game of Thrones feature set to the series' iconic main theme. Unlike Mad Men's theme, this music was very specifically written for the show. Ramin Djawadi, who composed the score and the diegetic songs for all 7 seasons of the show, had a fair amount to go on before he started work composing. He was able to watch the first 2 episodes of the show, as well as a preliminary rendering of the title sequence. The theme is absolutely iconic for good reason. Again, we have a lot of that repetition. The opening cello riff, Djawadi says, was the first thing that came to him, inspired by the sweep across the landscape of Westeros seen in the title sequence. It continues to loop and drive us forward throughout the very long track as the music oscillates between major and minor, keeping you from getting too comfortable with a show full of betrayals and reversals and sudden shifts in tone. In our dance number, the choreography unfurls from a central point with lots of rotation and leg extension. You can see a connection between this movement and the title sequence visuals of turning gears that reveal a landscape. Now, this piece is a lot more literal than the Mad Men act. Male dancers on either side of center do a sharks and jets dance fight thing in show-accurate dark leathers that make them honestly a little hard to see. This pulls my attention to the center tableau, which has a lot less motion but way more color. It's the color that tells you immediately who this is. This is Daenerys Targaryen and her dragons. Looking at the show as a whole, Daenerys does not have a lot of color in her wardrobe. She has several periods where she wears a lot of white, and then we get severe grays and blacks at the very end, but most of the time she's in neutrals. Natural fibers, leather armor pieces, scales, and braids. By volume, that's what she's wearing most of the time, but when I remember Daenerys Targaryen, I remember her in blue.
Dracarys.
And I think that's true for a lot of people. This is the Daenerys base look. This is what you wear if you were dressing up as Daenerys for Halloween in 2013. Daenerys really only ever wears a couple of blue outfits, but they are burned in my memory. Daenerys' most striking feature is her Targaryen blonde hair, and it does not take a rocket science to know you should put the blonde girl in a blue dress if you want her to pop. And this is the difference between imagery and iconography. This is very strong imagery with effective use of color and memorable shapes, but this is iconography. This is an image that I could replicate with stick figures and a couple of swipes of color and it would be recognizable. At the highest level, it's recognizable even to people who haven't seen the show. Once the performer wears this color, especially in that kind of silhouette, once she sits in the center of the scene with that regal posture, it takes a fraction of a second to read who she represents and what sort of a moment she's portraying. It might not be apparent on first blush that these two dancers are meant to be her dragons. It's hard to tell, but they do have these dragony jumpsuits on. But it's clear the relationship they have with the Daenerys dancer. She's the queen. She's the mother. Icon. Of course, this effect isn't always what you want. You don't want the costumes or the scenery to steal the show if they're distracting from other things going on. And even a show like Game of Thrones can only bear a certain number of these big visuals before it just all becomes noise. But creating these pieces of iconography can be really key to making a show that will grow and gain viewers and will last. And it's an interdisciplinary achievement that can't be ascribed only to the costume designer or the performer or the cinematographer or the director. And in a culture that wants to elevate individual achievements, especially in the context of, an award night, it's not always recognized for the hard work that it is. But these 20 seconds are a tribute to that achievement. A tribute to Daenerys, not strictly as a performance or a written character, but to Daenerys the icon in the old school sense of the word. Built on the work of individual artists, including some that were nominated that night, but more than the sum of those individual efforts. 17 seconds. 17 seconds and they do all that. And they even bring back Luck Be a Lady, which should not be working as well as it is with all of these TV themes.
Luck be a lady tonight.
They hit a final pose and we move on. American Horror Story Asylum was up for 5 primetime Emmys that night, as well as a bunch of creative arts Emmys, but it wasn't actually going up against Game of Thrones or Mad Men in any of those categories because it is technically a mini-series. AHS is an anthology series with a new story, setting, and characters each season, so even though the show was on its second season with much of the same creative team and cast, both of those seasons were eligible for mini-series awards. AHS was the most nominated show at the 2013 Emmys, and even though it was very well reviewed, I think we do have to acknowledge that part of that is the fact that it was entered in the less competitive miniseries or movie categories. This is one of many reasons that the miniseries categories should be thrown in the garbage. Now, I have not watched American Horror Story because I pay money for medications that are designed to reduce the sensations that horror is designed to elicit. So that seems like it would be counterproductive. But I read a detailed synopsis for each episode and watched one of those slightly wrong AI recaps, and I watched a few clips, through my fingers, to try to figure out where the visuals in this number come from. I realized I had actually seen a scene from this show. Jessica Lange's really unsettling rendition of Name Game is from this season of American Horror Story.
The Name Game, Judy.
The more you know. In the Emmys dance, this act still clocks in at about 17 seconds, but still manages to have a beginning, middle, and end, and we love efficiency. If, as I did when I watched this dance for the first time, you know nothing about this show, the dance still makes total sense. We are given the title, so we have a word bank, American horror asylum. American doesn't seem to figure directly into it, but given the context that this is a horror story set in an asylum, the dance is perfectly intelligible. We have an inmate victim here being dragged around by these white-clad figures, nuns or nurses of some sort, while also being chased by these creepy leather guys. Demons, literal or figurative, are also on her heels. She runs, she attempts escape, she is pulled down, she screams, the camera focuses on her open mouth in a perfect horror movie shriek, her posture is strained and unnatural, revealing her neck. It works. Outside of context, this dance works for me in representing a show that I haven't seen. The tone and style square with my expectations based on the title that I've been given. Now for this video, I looked into this show specifically looking for where these visuals come from. Having done so, I can see that this is not a literal character-specific representation like with the Game of Thrones act. The victim figure isn't dressed like any of the characters she might be compared to. She's just sort of wearing what you wear to do contemporary dance in the 2010s. The colors that I see in the show, light blues mostly with some burgundies, they aren't there. She's kind of a blank slate that's just slotted into the role of horror victim. The figures in black also aren't replicating anything we see on screen. There are many visually striking creatures of darkness in the show, including the very literally named Bloody Face. Google knows me well enough to know that even though I've just asked it to see Bloody Face, I don't really want to see Bloody Face. There was also the Angel of Death, who sometimes appears with giant black feathery wings. By the way, I don't need to say spoiler warning, right? Everything I'm talking about here has passed the 10-year mark, and I announce everything before I talk about it. If you do want to skip anything, I have put chapter markers, so feel free to skip ahead. Anyway, these guys are not in the show. In the dance, they're playing the role that trauma and shame and personality disorders and sexual assault and serial killers, I guess, play in the show. Most of the horrors in the story are affiliated with the asylum, who is the real monster and all of that.
Laurels for spring. Groundbreaking.
But again, they don't really look like this. Most of them are very realistic. Prior to the season airing, series co-creator Ryan Murphy warned fans that there weren't going to be any ghosts, and he promised a more grounded story than in the first season. He told TV Guide, "The story is a period piece in a mental institution based largely on truth, and truth is always scarier than fiction." I would point out that if you pull up the synopsis for the season, you'll see that there are aliens. But it's true that the story is built on a basis of the real-life horror of institutionalization for the mentally ill and disabled, particularly in religious institutions. And while the show integrates many fantastical elements, this is not the case specifically for the visuals and the costumes of the asylum staff. This all-white look, the billowing fabric, and the covered face, it actually doesn't appear in the show at all. It doesn't even appear in the title sequence. But it is all over the promotion for the show. Here they are in posters for AHS Asylum, and here they are in one of the trailers, which is kind of interesting to have a specific visual be so prominent in the promotional materials but not show up at all in the actual work. It's not very common, and in this case I think it's really effective. Like with the dance segment, this visual is intelligible to me as a non-viewer. I understand what kind of show this is. It's evoking the religious imagery, but it's heightened and otherworldly. This is clearly horror and probably graphic, but expensive and slightly prestige-y. It's good design work, and it's very well translated to the stage here. I feel the menace, the sterile coldness, the power from these figures. The dancer's movement is jerky and unnatural, moving from tableau to tell the story. And it's executed very well, so crisp and confident. The dancers did a really good job, although I can't tell you who any of them are. Earlier, I was able to very confidently identify Derek Hoff and Allison Holker, but from here on out, it gets a little tricky to point out particular dancers. This is partly because I'm just deeply bad at recognizing faces. It is a little scary sometimes how much time I can spend with somebody and still not be able to recognize their face out of context. But it's also because the lighting continues to be less than ideal. This must have been a very difficult sequence to light. There's constant motion, not only of the individual performers, but of the set pieces and of the cameras and of the point of focus in any given moment. These rolling box sets are also very tall, and they might cast shadows or limit the places they're able to put lights. The result is that the performers usually aren't lit in such a way that I get a good view of their face. And most of the time, that's actually fine, since the face should not be the focus here. This isn't a dance competition where you're watching for the dancer, but it does kind of make my job harder. For example, I'm pretty sure this is Travis Wall. but only pretty sure. I do know he choreographed this piece, but only because he said so in an interview. I can't tell you with complete certainty who choreographed this part of the dance, and you have no idea how much it pains me to tell you that. I tried, I spent a long time searching, I sent emails, I sent DMs, but I have neither the industry knowledge nor the clout to be able to actually get a firm answer on who choreographed which parts of the dance. I was able to gather some clues from the little behind the scenes package, but that actually only gave me 2 of the matches between act and choreographer, and one of them was Travis Wall, who I already had from that interview, so that was annoying. I'm assuming that each of the choreographers choreographed one act, and then they all collaborated on the very beginning and end, and the math works out that way, but I don't know that for sure. All the Emmys told us is they worked, quote, separately and together. There are so many articles and interviews from Dance World publications about this number, and none of them are specific about who did what. I did find one person who had a list of choreographers matched up with the acts, and it was blyrics.net. Look, the list seems right. This matches the 2 I knew for sure, and it matches my assumptions about what the other ones were. But who is blyrics.net? I don't know them. I don't know where they got this information. And honestly, it's hard to stay on this website for very long. So cards on the table, I'm just telling you that this is my source for that particular piece of information so that you can take it with the appropriate 3 grains of salt. blyrics.net tells me that the Asylum act was choreographed by Sonia Taya, which feels right to me. For comparison, this is one of the dances that she was nominated for that year. I can see the same use of those tableau moments where the dancers hold a dynamic picture of tension between them for just an extra beat. She's described her style as combat jazz, which is number 1, inconceivably badass, and also very descriptive and accurate to this really tense, sharp movement. Sonia Taya was also nominated for work on So You Think You Can Dance. She was a choreographer and an occasional guest judge on the show for 8 seasons and counting. Her longest list of credits is for the stage, including as choreographer for the Moulin Rouge musical, for which she won a Tony. She's also choreographed for artists like Miley Cyrus, Florence and the Machine, and even Madonna. She mentioned once in an interview that she would love to choreograph for American Horror Story, the actual show, someday, and I hope she does. I mean, I won't be watching, but I wish her well. As with the previous 2 acts, the music in this section has been kicked up a little bit to suit the dance better. This show was probably the biggest challenge to incorporate into the arrangement. The AHS score is hardly show tunes. It is written by Charlie Clouser of 9 Inch Nails, who also did the score for the Saw movies and other horror films. The origin of this theme music is so strange and circular. As I understand it, the creators of the show were using a temp track for the title sequence that was a track created by sound designer Cesar Davila Irizarry. This was before he was a professional sound designer, though. This is something he put together in his dorm room. It was a remix of the music in the opening titles of Seven, which is itself a remix made by a band called Coil of a 9 Inch Nails song. The AHS team was using it as a temp track and really fell in love with it and wanted that vibe for their theme, so they called up Charlie Clouser. So this 9 Inch Nails song was used as the base for the Seven theme, and then that was remixed into this piece of music that this guy made in his dorm room, and it was then handed back to Charlie Clouser to rearrange, who, unable to access the original files or satisfactorily recreate the vibe, ended up extracting samples from the stereo mix and used those as the basis for the AHS theme. Clouser told the AV Club, in the end, it was a collaboration that spanned 20 years of digital files. And so he and I share the writing credit on that, because a lot of what you hear is from his original piece of music he did in his dorm room in college many, many years ago after hearing the 9 Inch Nails remix in Seven. And then that piece of music went into the remix machine again to become part of the arrangement for the Emmys dance. I'm so curious if any of these people got paid for this. Moving on. Did anybody watch Boardwalk Empire?
To those beautiful, ignorant bastards. January 16th, 8:03 p.m., Johnny Torrio meeting with Nucky Thompson.
I mean, I know a couple million people watched it, but nobody I know watched it, and I am the mathematical center of the universe, so that seems weird. HBO's Boardwalk Empire was off the air by the end of the following year, and unlike all of the other shows referenced by this number, I just don't see it mentioned anymore. I remember it dominating the Emmy nominations in the early 2010s, but it's hard to point to any sign of cultural impact. In 2016, just a couple of years after the show ended, Sean Collins eulogized the show for Vulture as the most underappreciated drama of its time. Given that the show received great reviews at the time and was an Emmys darling for years, that set my expectations pretty high. I must be really missing out, and I love a good period piece. So I went back and watched the first season. I didn't really like it. I even jumped forward and watched a few episodes from season 3, which was the season that was nominated in 2013, because sometimes the first season is a little off, you know, it's a pancakes thing. And it was still... I want to be diplomatic here and say it wasn't for me, because that's true. This is not a show made with me in mind as a viewer, which is valid. Okay, confusing given that I am the precise center of the universe around which all of the planets swirl, but valid. But I also don't think it was very good, guys. And maybe, given the circumstances that led to me watching the show, maybe that's an issue of inflated expectations. I was expecting something on par with Mad Men, with Game of Thrones, with these other highly nominated shows from those years. But looking through the glowing contemporary reviews that this show got, I'm just not seeing the level of craft that other people seem to be seeing, and I'm left wondering how much of the show's acclaim is attributable solely to the fact that Martin Scorsese's name was attached. Is that actually good acting, or are they just playing gangsters?
Jim Colosimo, Arnold Watstein, and Charlie Luciano.
Jimmy Darman, Al Capone.
But hey, lots of people loved it, and I personally don't see the award-worthiness of the writing or the performances here, but that's not really relevant to my video here. I wanted to watch the show to get a sense of the visual language. There are probably many reasons that the show doesn't seem to be as well remembered as you would expect given the great reviews and the awards and the really solid viewership, but I think one piece of the puzzle, at least, is the lack of memorable imagery, much less iconography. I'll give Boardwalk Empire this: it is beautiful. Everything on screen is richly colored, every object is well made and stylish. It's a pretty show. But that's not the same thing as good cinematography, right? And it's definitely not the same thing as memorable, iconic imagery. This is a great counterexample that shows how difficult it is to create imagery that leaves a lasting impression. It can't just be beautiful. The world of Boardwalk Empire is clearly expensive, but never immersive. I was all too aware every moment that I was watching costumed extras scuttle around a plywood set. I'm reminded of HBO's current overly expensive period show, The Gilded Age, which has not been nearly as well received despite being, I think, similar in quality. And the worlds of these two shows leave me with a similar impression. Artificial, sterile. The rich and poor parts of town alike are squeaky clean and sharp angled. It's hard to know where to look because everything is equally emphasized. It's all too loud for any particular visual to land with a real impact. Boardwalk Empire doesn't have a Daenerys or even a Don Draper. It doesn't have any characters that can be recognized through their posture, their bearing, maybe a particular pose, and a carefully chosen costume element or prop. And without any standout story moments or relationships, it's hard to think of anything about this show that could easily be translated to dance. So it makes sense that the section of the Emmys dance honoring Boardwalk Empire doesn't actually have anything to do with the show itself. There's no reference to particular characters or situations, no visuals that are pulled from the show itself or the promotional images or the title sequence. It's not even a send-up of the genre as a whole. The dance is just 20s. The Emmys put a decent budget behind this number, but they were not about to custom make a bunch of costumes for it. These dresses came off a rolling rack labeled Flapper in some wardrobe warehouse in LA. Even in this fast-moving number, they are instantly readable as being 1920s outfits because they're so stereotypical. Not perfectly historically accurate, but they've got the hallmarks and they've got the recognizable elements. And boy, did these dancers look like everybody on Boardwalk Empire. The hems are a little higher because they're dancing, but this is basically what I remember seeing on screen, which is very unfortunate because so much more effort went into costuming Boardwalk Empire. Of course, there is actually a difference, and when you look at individual costumes from Boardwalk Empire, you can see detail and tailoring and so much budget. Even very accurate 1920s garments look like parodies of themselves if you're not careful, and I don't think Boardwalk Empire pulls it off. Some of the costumes are great individually, but looking at them as a whole, especially in big group or party scenes, it just looks like a Great Gatsby-themed fundraising gala. So weirdly, this is the most screen-accurate representation we've seen so far. What's making the costumes work is the same thing that makes the choreography work here. They're taking the same approach. There's nothing particularly Boardwalk Empire here, it's just 1920s themed. In the usual use of the vague concept of the 20s, fringe and feathers and a big jazz party with the Charleston. Cliché? Sure, but very well executed. I love this choreography, the movements are so crisp, and look how much fun everybody's having. According to B-Lyrics, and supported by my process of elimination, Mandy Moore choreographed this section. Of all the choreographers nominated, I think you are most likely to have seen at least one piece of her work. No relation to this Mandy Moore, the choreographer nominated as Mandy Jo Moore is also nominated for work on, you guessed it, So You Think You Can Dance. She's done some work for Dancing with the Stars as well, and she's done choreography for shows like Glee, American Idol, Modern Family, and Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, and for that last one, she's an executive producer as well. So she has done quite a bit of TV, but she is huge in the movies. She choreographed the ballroom sequence for Silver Linings Playbook, yes, that ballroom sequence. Some songs for American Hustle and Sleeping with Other People, and she was also the choreographer and the Stars dance teacher for La La Land. That's not even the big one. She also does stage choreography, some musicals, some live performances for recording artists, including a recent Stadium World Tour.
Welcome to the Eras Tour.
So obviously, to me, Mandy Moore is the most important person on this stage by a wide margin. I mean, Neil Patrick Harris is great, but did he teach Taylor Swift how to do this? Now, I've been a little selective so far about the clips I've been showing you from this dance, because we first have to talk about the music. Like Mad Men, Boardwalk Empire has an instrumental theme that is actually just the instrumental tracks from a pre-existing song. In this case, it's Straight Up and Down by Brian Jonestown Massacre. Not 100% sure I can say massacre on YouTube, but we're gonna find out. I think this song could be a decent theme for a TV show, but not this show, I don't think. Anachronistic music choices can work for a period show if done well, but this song feels totally disconnected from the show Boardwalk Empire. I don't see the tone or themes of the show reflected in the instrumentation of this song, or even really in the visuals of the title sequence. It goes on forever, but instead of using that time to transition me into another world, it uses that time to insist on its own coolness. I'm sorry, I'll stop talking about how much I didn't like this show now. The point is, the show itself doesn't offer great music for use in the Emmys dance number. I guess they could have brought back Luck Be a Lady here. It doesn't evoke the right decade, but it's about gambling and sex. There's a connection there. But for this section, they take that luck theme in a different musical direction. You know how bad your theme song has to be replaced by Daft Punk? I'm sorry, I'm done now. We're up all night for good fun. We're up all night to get lucky. So in case you forgot for a fraction of a second that this was 2013, we bring in Get Lucky by Daft Punk. Truly a spiritual successor to Luck Be a Lady. I love this. This is the greatest number of dancers we have seen on stage at the same time so far. Now, my calculations, which you should take with a grain of salt, tell me that there were 20 hired dancers for the dance overall, and at least 9 of them cannot be in this section because they are either in the one right before or after, or they would be getting changed at this point. More than 11 people are on stage right now, though, and those remaining dancers are actually the nominated choreographers. Hey, look! It's Mandy Moore. It is so fun to watch her dance. It's fun to watch all of them dance, but a lot of these other choreographers perform all the time. You can see them dance all the time, but Mandy Moore doesn't perform very often, so it's extra fun to get to see her do this, and she's having such a great time. Now, if we're keeping track, Derek Hough was in the Mad Men act. Since we see him here already in place as soon as the camera cuts, that leaves about 40 seconds between appearances for him to change and get to the other side of the stage. That is plenty of time, especially since he barely changed changed. This is the same outfit with a different vest. I think even the tie is the same. Once again, men's fashion has stayed the same for 100 years. Travis Wall is here too, though, and as I said before, I don't know, 85% sure we saw him 2 acts ago. From the end of the Game of Thrones act until he reappears is closer to 20 seconds, and he actually did do a costume change, so this is a legitimate quick change. Good job, Go team. Allison Holker is not here, and I do wish they had tried to make it work. Like, technically there is time for her to change and get everywhere she needs to be, but it's fair that they didn't. Now, these 2 dancers are also some of our nominated choreographers. Tabitha and Napoleon Domo are married, and they choreograph together, sometimes under the name Nappy Tabs. They actually choreographed the next dance coming up, so we'll talk about them in a sec. We've got our little tableau with our nominated choreographers, and there are 7 participating, minus Allison Holker, who's doing a costume change right now, which leaves us with 6. There's 6 in the tableau. The math checks out. That's what I always just assumed, because I recognized at least some of them, and they seem to be in a little set here, which would make this Sonia Taya. But that's not Sonia Taya. I did not notice this until I was far enough along in writing this video to actually look at screen caps. And, you know, she's got vaguely the same build and hair color, but even my brain with its very questionable facial recognition abilities, even I can tell that this is not the same person. I don't know who this is. Anyway. Shows like Breaking Bad are the reason that I'm able to have confidence in my evaluation of shows like Boardwalk Empire. Because this show is also not for me. Not my thing. I have seen a handful of episodes and another handful of clips. I might go back and watch the whole thing someday, but as of the last time I attempted to watch, this is not something I wish to experience. And yet I recognize that the show is extraordinary. From the glimpses I've taken in, I see excellence in the writing, the performances, the directing. I can't fully appreciate its amazingness, but at least what I've seen tracks with what I hear from people who have watched the whole thing and have that evangelical zeal about it being the greatest show ever made. Whether they're right or not, it checks out at least. And not for nothing, it has a pretty good theme, which was composed by Dave Porter, who wrote the score for the show. Now, for Breaking Bad, Dave Porter used this trick that Ramin Djawadi also used with Game of Thrones. Both shows had a memorable opening theme, specifically a recognizable riff in that opening theme that did not appear in the score of the actual episodes for most of the show's run. Throughout the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, Djawadi started incorporating elements from the main theme into the score of the show in a valiant effort to convince the viewer that what they were seeing had continuity. And as the series comes to a close, they finally bring in the whole theme into the score of the show. When scoring Breaking Bad, Dave Porter always had that opening theme in his back pocket. There were a couple major story moments where he considered using it, but always held back, always withheld that sense of closure from the audience. At the time he wrote the theme, he told the Wall Street Journal later, the show's creators already had an understanding of the overall trajectory of Walter White as a character, even though they didn't know all the details. So Dave Porter had a vague sense of the destination. He knew he was scoring a fall, a descent, a corruption. I wanted to give a glimpse of that destination, which the viewer would hear every time they watched the show. In the first season, the theme may have seemed a little darker and bolder than the show actually was, but the point was to have that little taste of where the show was going. Fast forward 6 years and we're close to the end. I've been biding my time looking for a moment where I could introduce the theme into the story itself. That moment when the title theme emerges in the show's score is a really significant story moment in Breaking Bad. Walter White makes the decision to return to New Mexico, and the die is cast on the events of the story's end. Now, you might be wondering, as I did, if the audience for the 2013 Emmy Awards had witnessed that moment yet. For that audience in that moment, is this guitar a foreboding suggestion of things to come, or is it an echo of an already finished tragedy? Are you ready? Because you're not going to believe this, because it is not either of those. The episode where the theme music comes full circle, Granite State, which is the penultimate episode of Breaking Bad, aired on September 22nd, 2013. The same night! The same night! The second half of the final season of Breaking Bad aired at 9 p.m. Eastern. The Emmys dance number aired a little after 10 p.m., which means that the use of the Breaking Bad theme in this dance and the use of the theme in the Breaking Bad score for the first time were happening not even hours away, but minutes away from each other. I don't really know what this means. I don't know what you're supposed to take from this. But that's weird, right? Now, this theme is a little understated for my taste because I want to be able to sing along, but it is a great fit for the show, undeniably. There's not quite enough here for a dance number, so they build off of that central riff in the theme and create a sort of dance remix, which is perfect for the preferred style of our next choreographers. Tabitha and Napoleon Domo were co-nominated for work on, say it with me, So You Think You Can Dance. Each of them has some individual credits as a choreographer, but the bulk of their work has been done jointly. They were married and working together since basically the beginning of their professional careers, which started with teaching hip-hop classes and backup dancing. Together, they hosted a show that I had never heard of called Rock the Reception, which ran for 9 episodes on TLC in 2009 and was a reality show featuring engaged couples with no dance experience preparing for their first dance at their wedding.
You have to go out there and have that same personality. Jack it off. Throw it like, this is my show.
Okay, I'm gonna bring it.
Okay?
The Domos have choreographed and directed music videos or tour performances for a ton of major artists, including Jennifer Lopez, Carrie Underwood, Mariah Carey, Ed Sheeran, and Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou's involvement being posthumous. Tabitha even choreographed Madonna's Super Bowl halftime performance. They work with Cirque du Soleil, with K-pop groups, with a number of charity organizations. They also have their own dancewear line called Nappy Tabs, which you can see worn on screen by the dancers in basically all of these reality competition shows, but especially in World of Dance, for which the Domos are supervising choreographers and co-executive producers. You might recognize one of the judges. Researching for this video really makes you realize what a small world Hollywood dance is. Plenty of awards categories have artists that are nominated over and over again, but I don't know of any other category that has this kind of repetition except for maybe the talk show categories. This wasn't the case before dance reality competition shows got big, and it's not really the case now, but for a decade, this particular group of nominees was taking home at least 2 of the nominations, usually 3, every single year. These artists pop up in each other's work all the time. I'll be looking at, say, Derek Hoff's list of credits, and I'll see he was in this dance movie, Make Your Move, in 2013, and oh, look at that, he's opposite K-pop star Boa, and I recall that she often works with the Domos, and look at that, the Domos are the choreographers for the movie. Now, this pair has also previously choreographed for the Emmys. In 2009, a year that the rating success of reality shows really punched the industry in the face, they were brought on to do a short number as an homage to those dance reality competition shows.
From Dancing with the Stars.
It is a much lower budget, lower concept number than the 2013 dance. There's nothing really wrong with it, but it's not engaging. Maybe it's how extremely literal it is. Maybe it's the 2009-ness, which was not a high point for music or popular culture. Oh god, the long tanks and comically short jackets help, but it's kind of boring, and that really just makes me appreciate how engaging the 2013 number is by comparison. There's no sense of direction in the 2009 number, and the camera sweeps aimlessly back and forth across the stage the whole time. And of course, the lighting is absolutely tragic, but that continues to be an issue in 2013. I don't want to throw too many stones about lighting, because it's not like my little videos are consistently or professionally lit, but for heaven's sake, you can at least see me. So there we go. We have covered all of the participating nominees, but there is still one more little box to be wheeled out. They're still going to do one more TV tribute. When I introduced Allison Holker, she was just dancing in the act that Derek Hough choreographed, but she is also nominated, and so she will choreograph the last TV-inspired act of this number. And if I didn't already know this number like the back of my freaking hand, I would never in a million years be able to guess what TV show is next. So here's the thing, The Big Bang Theory has a theme song, quite famously. It's probably the most notable exception to my observation that in 2013, proper theme songs were out of fashion.
Our whole universe was in a hot, dense state.
The Big Bang Theory theme, sometimes referred to as History of Everything, was written for the show by Canadian rock band Bare Naked Ladies. You might know them from hits like 1 Week or $1 Million, but I will always think of them first and foremost as the band behind some of the weirdest children's music ever made.
R is for Argyle. No, it isn't.
Singer and songwriter Ed Robertson said later that he was initially reluctant to take on the project because of past experiences pitching theme songs. He would painstakingly craft songs that incorporated character arcs and key phrases and the show's tone, and they listened to it and go, no, we were thinking we just wanted a hit single from Counting Crows. But Chuck Lorre and Bill Prady, the creators of the show, assured Robertson that he was the only one they approached to write the theme. By all accounts, it was a great collaboration, and it resulted in this frantic tongue-twister theme recorded by Bare Naked Ladies.
Neanderthals developed tools, we built a wall. We built the pyramids.
Now, a couple years later, Stephen Page left the band. This was shortly after the release of their magnum opus, 2008's Snack Time.
The ninjas are deadly and silent. They're also unspeakably violent.
There were some creative differences, some cocaine-related arrests. It seems like things got messy for a little while. In 2015, Page filed suit against Robertson over the Big Bang theme, alleging that he was owed 20% of over $1 million in royalties. The suit appears to have been dealt with out of court sometime in 2016. Now, you may have noticed that that song
started with a Big Bang.
Is not this song. In the arrangement for the Emmys dance, we do get a little bit of the theme's melody right at the beginning. And of course, the bang motif is pulled directly from the song. But it's not the actual song, and my assumption has always been that this was for rights-related reasons. It's unclear what the usage rights situation was for this number, but I have to imagine that this is the song that would present the most difficulty. But if that's the case, it seems strange that they would incorporate so much from the actual theme. It seems more likely that this was a creative choice. More likely, but also more baffling, because if you could have done anything, why would you do this? I mean, they do kind of make a dance mix of all these songs, and this version is easier to dance to in the way that it's being danced to. So, you're nominated for an Emmy Award for your choreography. And for the first time ever, you're going to be recognized at the main ceremony, and you have the opportunity to show off your work to a room full of the biggest names in the TV industry and celebrate your work. And this is what you do. Does this dance say, I am an award-worthy creator of innovative artistic movement? Probably not. But does it say CBS's The Big Bang Theory? Yes, it does. And what was the brief? The brief was to make a dance sequence inspired by and in tribute to The Big Bang Theory. And you can show off, or you can fulfill the brief, and this fulfilled the brief. This act is probably the most literal of all of the dance segments, even more so than the Game of Thrones act. Not only do we have pretty direct representations of 5 specific characters, but the dance as a whole tells the story of the show pretty directly. The Big Bang Theory is a sitcom, and it has one of the most tried and true structures for a sitcom setup. We have an established group with their own weird subculture, and then one character from a very different world dropped in the middle. That's something you can write 250 episodes for. Our 4 nerds are in their own little world with predictable patterns, disrupted by the arrival of Penny, whose defining features on introduction are not being a nerd and being hot.
I'm a Sagittarius, which probably tells you way more than you need to know.
As of Emmys night in 2013, The Big Bang Theory was a few days away from starting its 7th season, so we are right halfway the 12-season run. By that point, the show had already evolved from the original premise, incorporating more female characters and different group dynamics, but Penny's disruption of the established culture of the guys was still central to the show. I think any strong sitcom premise can be represented by a dance number. I think if it's a sound pitch, you can communicate it without dialogue in 17 seconds. But Big Bang Theory is actually not just the only sitcom, but the only comedy honored in the dance. Which is a little surprising given that in 2013, the comedy categories were full of some really beloved shows. Modern Family comes to mind as another show that might have been a good fit for this number. It was also very heavily nominated that year, and basically anybody watching will have heard of it. And Modern Family has a great theme, and it is very short, even shorter than 17 seconds, but they play an extended version of it for the end credits, and that's more than they need. And unlike a lot of the other themes, this is a great song for dance. I could see an arrangement of this song being used for a swing number in Dancing with the Stars. You get a bunch of dancers on stage, maybe dress them all in white, and have them do a dance with like big gold picture frames. It might have worked, but that's might have worked. This worked. It just works. It takes 0 seconds to recognize that this is Big Bang Theory. I mean, once again, it's not that hard. Put the blonde in blue, you're in business, but it is more than that. The costume designer for this segment committed. These 4 dancers are not in generic nerd gear. They are in perfect recreations of those characters' costumes with their exact silhouettes and color palettes. The most identifiable is probably Howard's outfit with the unsettlingly tight pants and a huge belt buckle. You can also spot Sheldon's preferred short sleeve t-shirt over long sleeve t-shirt look. The other 2 look similar, but they're still identifiable by costume details. I know this one is Raj because of the collar. It also helps that they were thoughtful about the casting for these 4 dancers. In particular, the hairstyles are a big hint, because remember, you aren't gonna see anybody's face. This number is a pretty good showcase for how strong the costume design for that show is. Considering that the setup of the show requires all 4 of these characters to have similar interests, jobs, and lifestyles, the costume design is really effective at making these on-paper similar characters unique. In the dance, these 4 are performing the same choreography and are moving in basically the same way, but it's hard not to project the characters onto them just from the different silhouettes. In the show and the dance, the costumes work seamlessly with the physicality of the performers and are such a key part of what makes these characters work. Listen, I know it's not cool to like The Big Bang Theory, okay? I know we're all way too sophisticated for such trash, but I'm sorry, it's a good show. You don't have to like it, and you can think that it's problematic and that the laugh track is annoying, but none of that means it's not well done. People like the show for a reason. Of course, popularity is not in and of itself proof of quality, but it is often a symptom of competence. And this is a competently constructed sitcom. It works. I am not really impressed with this choreography in and of itself as a dance, but it is effective at encapsulating several elements of the show, namely the raging slapstick horniness that pervades The Big Bang Theory. And that is to be commended. Okay, home stretch, we're almost there. We're almost done with the number. We have finished all of our little TV show vignettes, and all that's left is the big finale moment to send us home. Get Lucky comes back more straightforwardly this time, and all the available dancers come back out on stage. We're bringing back the Emmy Award trophy prop. Remember, this is about winning. Blyrics.net does not tell me who choreographed this part of the dance. I have to assume it was multiple choreographers, and nobody's style in particular really jumps out at me. This is the kind of generic production number that any of them are capable of doing. And it is the most 2013 thing to ever exist. Now, some of the earlier choreography certainly felt of the moment, okay? It was very representative of what was going on with TV choreography in 2013. But this is the part that feels really dated. It's got big party rock anthem energy. And the outfits, the pants cropped just a couple inches above the ankle, and the shoes and the suspenders. In earlier moments, you see hints of 2013 hair, but it really comes out for the finale. Poof, poof, poof. It's a little bit Well, it's a little bit show choir, and it's hard not to be reminded of Glee. In a celebration of scripted TV of the early 2010s as a dance number, Glee's absence is a little conspicuous. It's easy to forget that for a brief moment, Glee had actual cachet at awards shows. Now, after a few seasons, as the novelty wore off and arguably the show's quality dropped, the show stopped being called audacious and started being called trashy. The 2013 Emmys is actually the last time the show would receive multiple nominations. A few days after this ceremony, the show's 5th season would premiere with a sharp drop in viewership from the previous season. If this number had been created even just 1 year earlier, I wonder if there would have been a Glee tribute. But regardless, I definitely see reflections of Glee in this number, especially in this last bit. I've now mentioned a few shows that I think could have appeared in this number but didn't, but overall I think the choices make a lot of sense. Lots of the shows that were nominated that year have great music to dance to, but they don't have identifiable visuals to build the number off of. And this is especially true for comedies. Looking at the list of nominations, I see a lot of shows with strong and bold character designs. Veep, Parks and Rec, 30 Rock, they have characters that you could easily dress as for Halloween, but the show as a whole doesn't have a strong visual identity that's clear enough to play to the back of the house. Plenty of the dramas don't stand out this way either. Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones are kind of exceptions to the rule because they aren't dominated by men in identical dark suits. Other top nominated shows that year, like House of Cards or The Good Wife, of course have nuances to their stylistic differences that are apparent to you as a viewer of the show, but nothing unique enough to translate to the stage. Mad Men and Boardwalk Empire are also room full of men in dark suits shows a lot of the time, but at least they're period shows with interesting women's fashion and striking cinematography to build off of. Which brings me to a show, the one drama that was nominated for major awards in 2013 that has a strong and recognizable visual identity, that has a clear stylistic point of view for a choreographer to build off of, and has great theme music and a great score that is perfect for dancing to Downton Abbey. Where's my Downton Abbey act? It would have been absolutely perfect, and there were so many different directions they could have taken it, all of them fun, but I think these choreographers wanted shows with a little more edge. Would it be stereotyping for me to suggest that maybe Warren Carlyle, if he had been able to make the Emmys, would have picked Downton Abbey? Yes, it is stereotyping, but I think I'm right. Anyway, back to our number. I can't forget to mention the screens. The screens have been used all throughout the night of the awards broadcast, and at this point they are showing clips of different Emmys winners throughout history, and then they switch to giant flashing letters that spell choreography. It's amazing. During the last few measures, Neil Patrick Harris and our 7 present nominees come back out. And look, there's Sonia Taya. She looks fantastic and seems to be the only nominee who isn't a little bit out of breath from both the dancing and the stress of a quick change, which supports my belief that she doesn't actually dance in the number. I read some YouTube comments that says that she was one of the nuns in the American Horror Story act, and that's obviously possible because that could be anyone under there. But she looks so perfectly put together here that if she was just dancing and did a quick change, amazing. Most of them were in the Boardwalk Empire act and had about a minute to change, but Alison Holker was in the last segment before the finale, so she had about a 35-second turnaround max. And look at her, mermaid dress, not a hair out of place, great work. The dancers give us the big finish, and the splits, and the crowd applauds. The Television Academy made the stone-cold choice to bring on as presenters the people they bumped in order to do this dance number. Heidi Klum and Tin Gun won that year's award for Outstanding Host for a Reality or Reality Competition Program. They were co-nominated for Project Runway. Normally, if you win that award, you get to accept the Emmy on the primetime broadcast. This was the case the many other times that Project Runway was nominated and did not win. The only year that Tim Gunn and Heidi Klum won was the year that the Host Award was bumped to the Creative Arts Emmys to make room for the choreography extravaganza. This is truly a nice thing to do, okay? To let these winners have a moment on stage even though they weren't in the main broadcast. I'm sure it was both meant and received as a lovely gesture, but I'm sorry that's so so cold to be brought on to hand the trophy to the person they bumped you for after watching 5 minutes of hype. But Tim and Heidi look amazing, and they are very gracious, and the Emmy goes to Derek Hough.
And the Emmy goes to Derek Hough, Dancing with the Stars. Congratulations.
Wow. Thank you guys. I love you.
He gives a little speech that is about 30% whoops, not a criticism, just an observation.
And, holy crap.
And that's it. We move on with the ceremony, the 20 minutes that are left. And this has a very happy ending. All of the choreographers you see on stage would win this same award at some point later on. The Dumos actually already had one win, and then they would win this award the next year. Travis Wall wins the time after that in 2015, and Mandy Moore wins in 2017 and 2020. And Derek Hough would win this 3 more times. He won it most recently, still for Dancing with the Stars. Everyone here has an Emmy, except for Sonia Taya and Warren Carlyle, but they have Tonys, and that's better. Did this read as a vest at any point? I wanted to be giving Neil Patrick Harris at the Emmys, but I just kept looking at the screen and seeing myself in my 6th grade school uniform. The showmanship here, the Guys and Dolls tune, as TV referential as this number is, this does feel more like the Tonys than the Emmys in a lot of ways. And I simply can't see Neil Patrick Harris hosting an award show and not think of the best award show opening number of all time.
We might go bigger. That's right, it's bigger.
Like I've said, I love this Emmys dance number, and I do. It is the very best the Emmys have to offer. It's great. For the Emmys. These aren't the people you call if you want to put on a live musical number with costume changes and a story and a grand finale. You call them. This, of course, is Bigger! Exclamation point, the opening number for the 67th Tony Awards, which was also in 2013. Neil Patrick Harris was busy that year. And in a little full circle moment, just like the Emmys number referenced Harris's theater capabilities, the Tonys number referenced Harris's TV background.
I guarantee a truly legendary show.
It would take an entire other video, twice as long as this one, to name everything wonderful about this number, and honestly, you just have to see it in context. If you go from this video to watch anything I've referenced, it should be the Emmys dance number, I should probably say that, but this is a close second, okay? You should watch the Emmys dance number, and then Bigger, and then if you have time, you should listen to Snack Time.
I've got orange pants, I wear them when I dance, but I don't get out that much.
This is the platonic ideal of a Tony Awards opener. It was written specifically for the ceremony by Tom Kitt and Lin-Manuel Miranda, who were nominated that year for Bring It On, and the lyrics are every bit as good as you would expect. Every line is a new joke, a new clever rhyme.
Kids from Christmas Story, Annie and her orphans, so many child actors high on Red Bull and endorphins. They barely come up to your knees, but God, they're singing like MVPs, and they're the reason this whole season seems to look like Chuck E. Cheese. And geez, it's bigger. That's right, it's bigger.
And the staging is impeccable, with such fun dancing designed by prolific Broadway choreographer Rob Ashford. And Neil Patrick Harris just proves why he keeps getting these gigs. There's a moment halfway through where they do a little magic trick. Neil Patrick Harris gets into the box, he disappears, but then the camera swings around and there he is, dancing down the aisle with the cast of Newsies.
I'm walking down the aisle with some Newsies in tow. Yeah, no, it's bigger. So much bigger. If there's a Newsie you prefer, please let me know. You'll get a Newsie in your gift bag when you go.
So after running off stage and through the house to make his entrance to make the magic trick work, he then jogs back up the aisle while singing, makes it back on stage, makes a crack about Tom Hooper's Les Mis.
Let's see, there's like 150 of those punks. Oh, wait, check this out. Can I have my Tom Hooper Les Mis close-up, please?
And goes right into an old school patter song, which he executes perfectly. Crystal clarity, stunning breath control, hits all the comedic beats, and then this line.
Nothing is bigger and better than seeing a veteran get an ovation, or seeing a brilliant beginner freak out on a win on their first nomination. There's a kid in the middle of nowhere who's sitting there living for Tony performances, singing and flipping along with the Pippins and Wickeds and Kinkies, Matildas and Mormonses. So we might reassure that kid and do something to spur that kid, because I promise you, all of us up here tonight, we were that kid, and now we're bigger. Tonight it's bigger.
that kid. Gets me every time. And fitting for the title of the song, the number is huge in scale, involving over 100 performers. We get a handful of cast members of almost every musical running on Broadway at the time, including a ton of kids. The number is over 7 minutes, which is long even by Broadway standards. And you know this shit was under-rehearsed. They had to teach all these groups the choreography separately because all these people are currently in shows and, you know, busy. Harris would later talk about what a miracle it was that they pulled this number off. Like, the magic trick never worked properly until the real thing. They were flying by the seat of their pants to have all of these groups on and off at the right moment. He says he was so relieved that the Tom Hooper line got a big laugh because that gave him a couple extra moments to catch his breath.
See, on Broadway, we don't need extreme close-ups to prove we're singing live. We sing live 8 shows a week. Check it.
And many lyrics, as well as the overall concept of the number, really hammers home the idea that miracles like that happen every day on Broadway. I love award shows. I watch a lot of them every year, and the Tonys are consistently the most enjoyable, but it's a little unfair to put these shows in competition with each other. It's apples and oranges because at the Tonys, everybody in the room works in the live performance industry. They are spoiled for talent as well as experience and expertise putting on a live event. May I first draw your attention to the fact that I can see everyone. Look how well lit they are. Faces, faces, faces. I could tell you which of these Matildas is which. But while the technical proficiency on display here is astounding, that's not why this number is so beloved. It's remembered so well even a decade later because, you know, of the heart of the thing. There are hints of snark in the song, but mostly it's sincere. It's a big, gooey, cheesy show tune that celebrates Broadway unabashedly.
The cast of Bring It On had counts and 32 debuts. Hey kids, welcome to Broadway. Don't forget your union dues.
It is overflowing with excitement to tell everyone at home what these crazy theater people have been cooking up. What a wild and weird season it's been. Yeah, it's a crummy commercial, but that doesn't mean it's not also real. The number is delighted and honored to make space for the nominees to have a party, and it doesn't let us forget about the hardware and that the little spinny trophies handed out represent recognition by an exceptionally hardworking, accomplished industry, and that they represent someone's childhood dreams coming true. Their dreams. They were that kid. I see flashes of that spirit in the Emmys dance number. Actually, since the Tonys were several months before the Emmys, it is entirely possible that these choreographers were very influenced by the Tonys number. They are both big production numbers, though on different scales, and they all have little vignettes that honor nominated works. I haven't seen anyone involved mention this as an inspiration, and it's totally possible that the concepts emerged independently, but I do see a similar energy driving both of these numbers. The Emmys tend to fall somewhere in the middle on the spectrum of sincere to snarky. They aren't truly mean-spirited like the Golden Globes, but they don't have the Oscars level of obscene self-congratulation. The show often seems to struggle to find a tone or an identity, really. Television is a wide world, and at the Emmys, awards go to a huge span of projects. Not just comedy and drama, but prestige or lowbrow. Scripted and reality, pre-taped and lived, made on a shoestring or with an 8-figure budget per episode. It's hard to think of projects that have less in common than Game of Thrones, Big Bang Theory, and Mad Men, except for the fact that they're all on TV. Now that was all true 15 years ago, and now TV has been in an additional identity crisis as streaming services start to take up a greater and greater share of watch hours. This was referenced constantly in the broadcast for the 2013 Emmys, which is about the time that streaming originals were starting to invade the award space for the first time. It is becoming unclear what TV even is, which is hard if you're the person trying to award the best of TV. The 75th Emmy Awards ran this little montage of the biggest moments in 75 years of TV.
I'm gay.
It included, among other things, Ellen coming out, the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, The Simpsons adopting their dog, Kelly Clarkson winning American Idol, JR being shot, the Red Wedding, the moon landing, the O.J. Simpson chase, and the second plane hitting the tower. It's no wonder that the Emmys tend to be a little unfocused. The industry doesn't have a united public-facing identity the way that Broadway does, or even filmmaking Hollywood does. How do you celebrate all the great things you did last year if you don't even really know who you are and what you do? The 2013 dance number is one of the Emmys' best attempts to do that. To say, you know what? We did great work. We make good stuff and people like us, dang it. Our medium is deep and wide and we are putting out groundbreaking, genre-defining work right now. Let's have fun, be a little silly, and celebrate it. Even though we do one of these every year, let's remember what a big night this is for these nominees and that we're here to watch somebody's actual dreams come true. I think that should be the tone of awards shows all the time. If you're gonna throw an enormous party and broadcast it to the wide world, you should be able to every year stand up and say, we did great work this year. We worked hard and we made cool stuff, and how amazing is it that we get the chance to share it with the world. And yeah, none of us put out fires or administer medicine or teach third grade. We don't solve actual problems. But we are proud of what we do and what it gives to the world. Most award shows don't say that to me, either because they are burdened with too much unearned self-importance to express gratitude and joy, or because they soak themselves in irony to cover up how little they have to be proud of. I love television. I do not harbor any illusions that the people who make it are people that I want to erect a statue to. But I think every year the industry produces some work that's worth being really proud of. And it's kind of sad to watch the years where they set aside a whole night to celebrate it and either can't or won't express genuine, humble, earned pride. I don't think the Emmys has done it since this night. They've done some fun things recently. The January 2024 award show had a series of little cast reunions of past TV shows. A lot of the reunions were only a couple people because other cast members were unavailable or have passed away, but this was such a fun concept. It reminds me a lot of the dance number and the way it honors less celebrated elements of the art form. In this case, the set design was front and center, and it also honored some long-running sitcoms, which are sometimes under-awarded given how impactful they can be. But reunions are for things that have ended. And all of these little features were for past shows, which is lovely, don't get me wrong. I think it's a good thing for award shows to celebrate major milestones and achievements of years past. Sometimes you can only clearly see that in retrospect. But I do think it's telling that most of the time, the only times these shows hit that celebratory tone, the only time they can proudly and unironically stand behind the worth of what they produce, it's for a eulogy. With so many segments of the show spent looking back, you feel a lack of confidence in the current state of television. It feels like a retreat to the past by an organization afraid to look forward, which ironically is what I do when I rewatch this dance number. I'm living again in 2013 in a world where all of these amazing shows were on air at the same time, when it seemed like the new golden age of scripted television would last forever. Look at these faces. These people have never read a Netflix cancellation announcement. In preparing for this video, I read a bunch of the recaps and contemporary reviews for this broadcast and some discussions of this number specifically. I love this number so much, and I remember it so fondly that I was floored to realize that people hated it. Okay, to be fair, not everybody hated it. Some recaps of the ceremony even mentioned it as a highlight, although they don't go into a lot of detail, like I do here. And it seems like people in the world of dance or fans of these choreographers really embraced it. Bafflingly, some recaps of the ceremony don't mention the dance number at all, which I truly can't understand. How is this not the headline? But mostly, it's bad, you guys. People did not like this dance number. Things get weird with TV-themed interpretive dancing segment. This is the headline from The Hollywood Reporter. Audiences are left confused, bemused, and, in the case of one Breaking Bad break dancing sequence, utterly horrified at what was playing out before them. Linda Holmes, who's one of my favorite critics, did not like it. It might have seemed like a good idea on paper, but it wound up feeling like the corniest of corny old-school award show stuff, in which there were actually people dressed as Walter White and Jesse Pinkman dancing to a souped-up dance mix of the wonderfully spare Breaking Bad theme music. If you've always wanted interpretive dance about Game of Thrones, then this was your number, but if not, it was not so much. For Vulture, the recappers called it the lowest low of the night. We love dance, but it was not the time, 10:17 p.m., or place, a television award show, for a behind-the-scenes fedora fest and a ridiculous television-inspired Get Lucky ballet. They couldn't show a single in memoriam clip, but they saved 10 minutes for fake Breaking Bad choreography? Emmy decision-making at its worst. Behind-the-scenes fedora fest, that's a solid burn. That's accurate. But I am curious what real Breaking Bad choreography would be. Entertainment Weekly also called it one of the worst moments of the night and said the number was, quote, bananas. Because when you think of Rubber Man, you think jazz hands. Today said that Neil Patrick Harris was wasted again in a weirdly interpretive dance number of the year's best drama nominees. Did a frustrated dance major decide to present this via the nominees for best choreography? Does the world really need to see two hazmat-suited men dancing with Breaking Bad-shaped periodic table element cubes? What is Breaking Bad shaped? You said they were cubed. And the tweets are brutal. By the way, we have not begun to reckon with the impact of Twitter specifically on our history making. Obviously, social media in general totally changed the way we communicate and the way that events are recorded for the near future. But Twitter specifically, remember, it had this cachet where you could just embed 20 tweets in an article, and that was it. That was the article. You could go home, you did a journalism. Now, this is 2013, so those tweet roundup articles are still mostly about celebrity tweets. The idea of a celebrity tweet was still being treated as like an inherently interesting concept by news media. That year, the Emmys actually had a little selfie station set up backstage so that presenters and winners could post from the Emmys official Twitter account, often looking a little confused about what they were doing. But sitting here in 2024, I'm definitely grateful for these lazy tweet roundups because a lot of the originals are not available anymore. Anyway, Martha Plimpton said, with 5 M's. Emmys, when will we dispense with the dance montages? No one likes them, y'all.
I like you.
We'd rather hear from the people we're honoring. While the dance was happening, Jenny Garth tweeted, "What is happening? Emmys, weird, arbitrary dance numbers, ... The writers and bloggers that were live tweeting the broadcast did not like it any better, but they were at least funnier. A fun thing about the Emmys is you can go to the bathroom during a choreography reality sketch and return to the haunting specter of death. Tonight's lesson is that if you endure bloated dance numbers and creepy death applause, the #Emmys will reward the meth-themed show you love." You'll notice those last two actually both mention death, and I should mention that the 2013 Emmys talked a lot about death. Like every other year, the broadcast included an in memoriam segment honoring people who worked in the industry or had been honored on the show who passed away in the last year. But most years, that's it. It's just the one song. Not the case in 2013.
Celebrate TV's best at the Emmy Awards with special superstar tributes from Robin Williams, Edie Falco, Rob Reiner, Jane Lynch, and Michael J. Fox.
Those superstar tributes are eulogies. Those are tributes to dead people. What a weirdly excited way to hype them up. So in addition to the regular in memoriam montage, special segments were set aside for 5 industry figures that passed away that year to be eulogized by someone who worked with them. Again, this does remind me a little bit of the 2024 ceremony and those little reunions, which inevitably call attention to the performers who passed away. But in that context, it's sad for sure, but in a wistful, affectionate sort of way. In the 2013 broadcast, it quickly becomes punishing. Some of these segments are over 2 minutes, which is an eternity in award show time, and is longer than they let a lot of the award winners talk. And that is just a straight, unbroken speech. As some of those tweets pointed out, there aren't clips from the person's work to break things up and kind of lighten the tone. The tone is kind of bleak. Remember, these are all people that died within the last 12 months, and you can hear pretty fresh emotion in some of these speeches.
Tonight we remember Corey for all he was, and mourn the loss of all he could have been.
So they're long, and they're raw, and there's 5 of them, and they are scattered throughout the night, creating this feeling that tragic death was hovering over the entire broadcast. This seems to be a very well-meaning, sincere effort. I am sure the people who planned these tributes hoped it would honor and uplift the memory of these artists, but this format was just not a good idea and is clearly a major factor in the poor reception of the show overall. By the time the dance number rolls around, the broadcast feels like it's been going on forever. Preparing for this video, I watched the awards broadcast in its entirety. You can find it on YouTube, but don't go back and watch the whole thing. This is what you're missing.
With that. These two performing sisters are much different than the performing sisters I saw in Thailand 3 years ago. Please welcome Emily Deschanel and Zoe Deschanel. I know for a fact that Jimmy Kimmel is really excited to be presenting this next award with them. I mean her. Please welcome Jimmy Kimmel and Sofia Vergara.
Tell you why I wasn't asked back. I wasn't asked back because I'm a woman.
Hey, come on. I don't think anyone that watched you host that night thought of you as a woman.
I'm going to show you.
I didn't edit that last one. They told that joke and then cut straight to Louis C.K. just to make sure the clip would age as poorly as possible. Even watching without the commercials, it feels so long. The bits are stretched out with awkward pauses even when they're funny, and usually they're not. And there are some completely bizarre segments crammed in there. Here's Carrie Underwood singing Yesterday. So far away. I bet you can't guess what that's in tribute to. I will give you 1,000 guesses, because you will use all of them and not guess that this is a tribute to the 50th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination.
Here is a bulletin from CBS News. From Dallas, Texas.
At one point, Elton John comes on and he debuts a brand new song as a tribute to Liberace for, again, unclear reasons. There are a few tolerable moments, a couple that are even funny, but every time you start to have fun, they halt the show for another 2.5 minutes remembering someone who died.
Henry tragically died earlier this year, and his award is being accepted by his wife, Sarah Bromell.
It's one thing if you're watching this show from your couch with snacks and maybe a second screen, you're in, you're out. But if you're in person in the audience, or if you are watching this show for your job, you're not in a great frame of mind for whimsy. You're not in the right place for something odd and goofy and campy and joyfully weird. I think these viewers have just run out of patience for self-indulgence by the time the dance number rolls around, which is not great because this number is nothing if not self-indulgent. If this number had been the opener for the show, maybe these people would have still hated it. Okay, that's possible, but I don't think they all would have. I think some of them would have liked it at least a little if they hadn't been beaten down by the previous 3 hours. A lot of these takes use very similar verbiage. TV-themed interpretive dance segment pops up a lot, and a number of writers suggest it sounded good on paper. This isn't that weird. There's only so many ways to describe things, but it does feel like there was a group chat. You know, feels like maybe one cool person tweeted that they didn't like it, and everyone decided they didn't like it. I also noticed that most of the time the dance number was brought up, they did not list every TV show it referenced. Usually just 1 or 2, and they always mention the Breaking Bad act. Maybe this is because Breaking Bad won the biggest award that night, but there seemed to have been a particularly strong negative reaction to the Breaking Bad segment. The Hollywood Reporter called this segment in particular a low point for popular culture. It also refers to the movement as breakdancing, and actually a lot of people did. On the one hand, these guys are doing a Breaking Bad dance. They're breaking it down about Breaking Bad. What should this be called if not breakdancing? It is correct. But breakdancing is an actual thing. It's an actual type of dance, and it's not this at all. So it's weird to see so many people use the term. And there's a pearl-clutching tone to a lot of these reactions that make me feel like maybe something else is going on, that I'm picking up on some undertones. Whether or not people like this number is a difference of opinion. Okay, I can understand the dislike even if I strongly disagree, but the claim of confusion in some of these responses feels very fake to me. Us Magazine can't believe the dancers, quote, didn't even crack an ironic smile as they danced to tell the audience whether or not this was a joke. The Hollywood Reporter insists that everyone in the room was bewildered by what they were seeing, unable to figure out why TV characters were dancing at them. And I'm sorry, you can't possibly be this confused. This is fake. This is saying, I don't understand it, to get out of saying what you really mean. And the implication that this dance is like tainting the prestige of your favorite fancy drama, it feels loaded. It feels, frankly, very classist and elitist. And it's one of those moments where I can't be sure what it is you're trying so hard not to say, but you're making me worried it was racist. Now, the biggest celebrity diss came from Ellen Pompeo of Grey's Anatomy, and she called the whole ceremony dated, and specifically called the dance number embarrassing. Did you see one person of color in that dance number? She later said these comments were made off the record, though she does stand by them. I have a hard time believing any human being constructs sentences this way in casual conversation, but okay. This is basically the only actual criticism of the dance that I found circulating in the days after the ceremony, beyond a vague, it doesn't make sense, and it was cheesy. Now, Pompeo is not technically correct to suggest that there were no people of color in the dance. There were. But going through the dance to screenshot every time they do a diversity would be weird, and it would miss the point. She is correct that the number was overwhelmingly white. This, too, feels very 2013 to me. Not uniquely 2013, but very 2013. If you look at the shows honored by the dance number, all of them have only white leads. Several of them have all white principal casts, and those that don't have like one or several people of color in an otherwise white principal cast. And that pretty much lines up with the nominations overall that night. When I talked about the iconography of Daenerys in the blue dress, I left out a really important example. And if you've seen the show, or maybe even if you've just seen discussion of the show, there's a good chance you know what I'm about to say. It's this shot. This is from an episode at the end of season 3, which was nominated for several awards that night. It is a stunning shot. Very effective filmmaking. So effective that it works as a visual shorthand. Not just for Daenerys as a character, but in this case also a shorthand for the show's treatment of race. This image is all over articles and videos about the colonialist politics of Game of Thrones, especially analysis of Daenerys through the lens of the white savior trope. I like all of these shows, but they have problems, right? Of course they do. And when you line them all up like this, it becomes easy to see that they all have a lot of the same problems. There are some through lines, and you could make some very similar video essays about each of these shows and their treatment of people of color or their portrayal of racial violence. You could make an argument that they have similar failings in their portrayal of female characters, of disabled characters. They're such different shows, but it's very easy to see that they were all made by the same industry with the same biases and failings. This dance tribute will likely reflect those same failings. It too was made by the same industry. This is what happens when an industry awards and congratulates itself. In this case, the industry that gathered together in September 2013 to hear jokes like this.
Orange is the new black. Or, as Paula Deen now has to call it, orange is the new African American. Not soon enough?
Good.
Welcome to the post-video meeting. Thank you for coming. Please take a seat. I have some retractions, some corrections, some notes. Apparently, I'm pretending to be a podcaster today, so I'm going to put the camera very far away and put my mic like this where you can see the whole arm and sit in a really stupid way. I'm going to have the microphone right up to my mouth to the point where you can't even see my face. And it's going to be distracting the whole time. If I said this is what a podcast looks like, you would all understand what I'm saying, even though 3 years ago, if I said that same thing to you, if I told you to picture what a podcast looks like, you would look at me like I was stupid because podcasts are an audio medium. But I can't get into that right now. I can't get into any more digressions or complaints because we have some business to attend to. Firstly, I said the Dumo's name wrong every time, I'm pretty sure every single time I said it, I said Domo, not Dumo, even though in my head I was saying Dumo. And it's spelled like it said, it's spelled with a U, and everybody said it right in all of the videos that I watched for research. So I don't know why I would have gotten it wrong. Something about the apostrophe throws me off, really bamboozled me. Secondly, no, I did not have a black eye on my final day of filming. What you are seeing is a shadow, unfortunately falling across some underblended eyeshadow. I'm okay, don't call Paw Patrol. Next, I would like to issue a heartfelt personal apology to the Television Academy. If you're listening, the Television Academy, I am so sorry that I used clips from the Emmys broadcast in my video about the Emmys broadcast. I'm so sorry. That was so wrong of me. Can I please post the video now? Next, in the American Horror Story dance, the guys in the all-black latex suits, they actually are from American Horror Story. I never would have figured this out because I was just researching American Horror Story Asylum, but some of my patrons let me know when they watched the video early that there is a rubber man figure in the first season, and I think actually also later seasons, and that's what he looks like. So this does modify my analysis that the imagery in that act is not specifically from the content of the show itself, but the larger point still stands that this is something that's perfectly understandable to you, even if you haven't seen the show, just on a purely symbolic level. If you watched that section and you commented making that correction, no take backsies. You already engaged. But if you would like an opportunity in the future to be the first one to tell me that I am wrong, you can join me over on Patreon. If you know me in real life, you know I don't let a lot of people tell me I'm wrong about stuff, but I am so grateful for my lovely patrons giving me their thoughts before the video goes live on YouTube, except for this part. Of course, this part was recorded after, so actually you are seeing it before any of my patrons. I doubt any of them are going to immediately go and rewatch the video, so oh, the turntables. And last but not least, it must be addressed. Do you like my hair? It's got a little bow. I have been practicing the half up, half down with a big old bow for reasons. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.